Hey everyone, my name is GFarmB, and today I'm going to be talking to you all about the 10 creepiest moments in the Legend of Zelda franchise that terrified me as a kid. I mean, just absolutely terrified me. Disclaimer, these are just my opinions. You don't have to agree with them. If you do agree with them, I'm glad that we have something in common, but do not come at me saying that this is not the scariest stuff, because these are my opinions. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. Now, before we go into the 10 that I have on this list, I want to take a second to talk about an honorable mention. I don't feel as if this moment was scary enough to be put on my list. However, I did want to bring it up because this was terrifying to me as a child. That being said, honorable mention, Yetta's conversion from The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. This scene occurs in the Snow Peak Ruins boss room. Snow Peak Ruins itself is already somewhat creepy. A Yeti couple, Yeto and Yetta, live alone in this frozen wasteland. The whole quest involves bringing Yeto soup ingredients for his sick wife Yetta. At the end of the stage, Link desires the piece of the Twilight Mirror in which Yetta is not about to hand over. The mirror shard has cursed Yetta, and the curse effects are seen when what appears to be a harmless female Yeti turns into a terrifying monster, triggering a boss fight. The whole scene has an unsettling mood, and Yetta's transformation into Blizzetta definitely sent chills down my spine as a child. Number 10. Floating Zelda from The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword. The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword did not have many aspects that gave me the creeps, but one certain scene freaked me out. After Zelda emerges from the seal, what was a heartwarming reunion quickly goes wrong. Gyrahim, one of the main antagonists in Skyward Sword, suddenly appears and shoots a magic beam to separate Zelda from Link. He then tells Link, "The goddess is mine," and suspends Zelda into the air where she appears lifeless, taking her back in time to demise. Fast forward to the cutscene before the last Gyrahim battle. Gyrahim is dancing around a lifeless Zelda like an absolute maniac. He then proceeds to suspend her in the air again to perform a summoning ritual. The next cutscene after the Horde battle shows him throwing Zelda even higher into another suspension, and he reveals his true form. After his defeat, the Imprisoned emerges and sucks the life out of a still floating Zelda. Zelda's power is enough to allow the revival of Demise to be completed. After his transformation, Demise turns Gyrahim into a sword and launches a suspended Zelda flying away with a tornado. What makes this whole thing more disturbing to me is hearing Zelda's desperate screams of pain. We also finally see a Zelda antagonist torture the princess, which had not really been super detailed in the past games. All in all, this whole series of events was something that definitely made me uncomfortable as a kid. So the floating corpse of Zelda makes its way into number 10 on my list. Number 9, Sheik gets launched. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. After the player completes the Water Temple, returning to Kakariko Village, a town normally very peaceful with calming music, triggers a scene that is anything but calm. The entire village has been set ablaze by a demon that dwells in the bottom of the town's well. Sheik is depicted standing over the well, staring into the depths of it. When Link begins to approach Sheik, she warns Link to get back. A piece of wood launches into the air and rain begins to fall, setting the scene. The point of view changes to that of the demon, where it charges a very clueless Sheik. We then see Sheik being spun around uncontrollably in the air by some invisible being, and then Sheik gets launched to the bottom of the staircase. An unidentifiable figure of matter then begins to rapidly and randomly roam around the town, and then it decides it isn't finished with the already wounded Sheik. Link, now attempting to protect Sheik from the demon, can be heard screaming as the screen goes black. After both regain consciousness, Sheik tells Link that the Shadow Spirit seal has been broken. The scariest aspect of this scene was seeing Kakariko being burned. The old graphics when Sheik is being spun around in the air definitely didn't make the scene any better either. Nonetheless, this scene sets the player up for adventures of the game that absolutely traumatize small children. Trust me, I was one of them. Therefore, the Yeet of Sheik makes its way into the number 9 spot on my list. Number 8, Shadow Beasts, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Most encounters with the Shadow Beasts in Twilight Princess are relatively simple and normal. One cutscene did not set right with me, however. Early in the game, after finding the fugitive Zelda in the Twilight Realm, Zelda explains to Link and Midna how all of the chaos has come to be. In the cutscene, the Shadow Beast army, led by Zant, completely overpowers all members of Zelda's army. The Shadow Beast holding down the struggling soldier is what made me terrified of having to face these enemies later on in the game. Granted, we learned that Shadow Beasts are actually pretty easy opponents and become more of a nuisance than anything. When battling these enemies, the player must use the Wolf Link Midna combo to defeat them all at once. But what placed these enemies on my list is this. If you fail to defeat them simultaneously, the lone survivor will let out a blood-curdling screech to revive its fallen comrades. Not exactly the most soothing revival lullaby either. This horrifying screech appeared in many of my nightmares as a kid, so for that reason, these beasts made their way onto my list, setting at number 8. Number 7, Redeads, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Now, let's be honest. All Redeads in the Zelda franchise are unpleasant to the eye, but it's just something about the Redeads from the Wind Waker that almost made me cry as a kid. Compared to other Zelda games, the Redead design in Wind Waker is just next level. They emerge from coffins, and the falling door of the coffin can hurt you. Plus, their paralyzing scream is just absolutely mortifying. And if the scream itself wasn't enough, wait until one catches you. You can physically see the Redead taking bites out of Link's head. I still hate them to this day. I often stop playing the game once I reach the Earth Temple because I simply do not want to take a chance on getting caught by one of these terrifying opponents. And in our number 7 spot, we have the Link-eating Redeads. Number 6, The Moon, The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. It's no secret that Majora's Mask is arguably the darkest and creepiest installment in the Zelda franchise. Almost every aspect of this game is unsettling. One of the most disturbing aspects is the design of the moon. I mean, why did it need to be this scary? Just look at it. Not to mention that at any point the player is outside, they can just look up and be reminded that it's up there just staring at you. And at the end of the game, Majora's Mask decides to possess the moon. This triggers the moon to say that it will consume everything. Yeah, it's a no from me. And if all that isn't enough, if the moon is ever granted the opportunity to crash, well, good luck sleeping. Talk about meeting with a terrible fate. And with that, we wrap up number 6 on my list. Number 5, Zant's Neck Crack, The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. For anyone who has played The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, you know Zant serves as a puppet for Ganondorf throughout the game. Zant also mainly appears with a helmet on, and it isn't until late game that we see Zant's face. And, well, it isn't exactly pretty. After defeating Zant, a cutscene shows Midna killing him, right? Fast forward to endgame. After the player defeats Ganondorf, he's going on some big rant about how he will return and kill us, blah blah blah, the usual, right? So, explain to me why what finally kills him is Zant. A cutscene shows Zant crack his own neck. Then we see Ganondorf's neck has also been broken from him going wide-eyed and finally dying. Hold on, what? How did someone who is dead learn to take over Ganondorf, who has controlled him the entire game? And how did Zant even get the ability to crack his neck again? We saw Midna turn him into literally nothing. Was Zant still infatuated with Ganondorf and wanted him to join him in the afterlife? Did Zant turn over a new leaf? This mystery itself is a whole game theory, but to me it's just absolutely disturbing and made its way to number 5 on my list. Number 4, Romani's Abduction, The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. In my opinion, the next scene is one of the most disturbing elements in a Zelda game ever. Romani is a very young girl who lives on Romani Ranch with her sister. She tells Link of these ghosts that come and abduct the ranch's cows, and asks Link to help protect them. The objective is to shoot the aliens before they get into the barn, where Romani is stationed to guard the cows. If the player lets an alien get into the barn, however, a cutscene is shown of the cows and Romani being abducted. But not to worry, if the player goes back to the ranch, Romani is back. But she definitely isn't the same Romani we saw earlier. She is shown to be very disoriented and scarred by her abduction. This whole series of events is just very dramatic and unsettling, causing it to land in the number 4 spot on my list. Number 3, Majora's Wrath, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. The Majora's Mask installment makes its final appearance on this list with the final form of the final boss, Majora's Wrath. The design of this boss is terrifying enough as is. Its oddly multicolored limbs coming out of what was once a basic face mask add to this boss's eeriness. The mask now also has attached whips to its arms and uses them as its primary weapon. It will sling its whips at Link very chaotically and often appear to taunt Link with them. It also has the voice of a woman in distress, which is anything but normal for a final boss. It screams like a woman who's literally being stabbed to death when the player cuts it with their sword. It also laughs at Link very frequently in the final battle. What even is this thing? To make matters worse, it will use its whips and spin around like a ballerina. It also appears as if it's playing with Link during the fight, as it throws out spinning tops with spikes. This boss may not initially seem that scary, but the more the player progresses into the fight, it quickly becomes a living nightmare, landing it in the 3rd spot on my list. Number 2, The Dead Hand, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. This mini-boss in the Ocarina of Time installment was almost placed in the number 1 spot for me, but the Dead Hand is honestly something you would see in a horror film. Located in the bottom of the well, the player must face this enemy in Link's young form. This thing is a big white blob, with blood spattered all over its body. It slithers around in a terrifying manner that still to this day makes me want to throw up. It stays underground until one of its many hands that are above the surface capture its prey. It then will slither over to them and prepare to take a bite out of its next victim. This thing's face also gives me the creeps. Its mouth gets so big when it's about to bite you. And no, this enemy is not challenging at all, but the Dead Hand is possibly one of the scariest enemies in Zelda history. And for that reason, the Dead Hand sits at the number 2 spot on my list. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Drumroll, please. Nah, I'm just kidding. Number 1, House of Skulltula, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I'm sure many of you are very surprised that a scene from Majora's Mask was not in the number 1 spot, but this number 1 ranking is very much justified. The number 1 seat holder is an aspect that is so small in the game that it's not even required. That being said, if someone's going for a 100% playthrough of Ocarina of Time, get ready to be scarred for life. In the House of Skulltula, Link walks in and then encounters a Skulltula. Well, at least you think it's a Skulltula. We quickly learn that it is not a Skulltula, and is actually a human who has fallen under the curse of the Gold Skulltula. Yes, it's half spider and half human. I already hate spiders enough, but giving one a design like this is probably the most unsettling thing that I have ever seen in a video game. The person under the curse has the same movements as a Skulltula also. To me, this is one of the most underrated horror aspects in any Legend of Zelda game ever. Just the thoughts of this will cause me to feel like something is crawling on me. Though I'm sure many of you will not agree with this number 1 spot holder, I had to place it here over the Dead Hand. It was just too creepy not to get ranked first on my list. And with that, we wrap up my top 10 scariest Zelda moments. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and if you liked it, be sure to hit that like button. I also stream Nintendo content live on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday from 9:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. Eastern. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at GFarmB. Thank God I made my username the same on everything. But until next time, game on.